This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Rena Malari-Cargill of the team just outside of Nashville this year.
That's right. Look at the physics behind how stuff breaks.
Yes.
That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by Mitutoyo America. Whatever your metrology challenges, Mitutoyo supports you from start to finish.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for June 24th, 2016. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yes, he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. Combating the Cult of Busy is the name of a piece that we ran in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. The article reports on findings initially published in the Johns Hopkins Health Review magazine, which indicate that approximately 1/3 of surveyed Americans don't feel they have enough time to do what they need to do each and every day. Imagine that. Just imagine that, Dirk. It's no surprise that the majority of those time-strapped folks also report that they battle with stress on a regular basis. Gee, I wonder if there's any connection there. Don't have enough time to do what I gotta do, and I'm all stressed out. I can't imagine that. Well, so the question though, of course, is what do you do about it? The Johns Hopkins Health Review offers some practical advice about how to handle that, and some of it is, as I say, pretty practical. So let's take a quick look at it. First is keep a time diary. So that really means kind of understanding what you do to actually really spend your time, how much time you spend doing the things that you do, and looking at things that maybe are time wasters and trying to identify.
Time to write in my diary.
Maybe you have to make time. We're going to get to that. Well, the next one is prioritize what matters. Examine what's important and structure your life and your time around those priorities. You know, if you have an art class that's important to you, your kids play baseball or softball or soccer, do that. Make sure you do that. If that's the important stuff to you, make sure you focus on those things. Those are really important. Abandon perfectionism. That's a good one. You know, you can't be all things to all people. So the survey says don't even try. I mean, to me, when I read this part of it, I thought this is analogous to over-processing in a lean sense, right? When you talk about the 7 deadly wastes of lean, you know, when you try to be a perfectionist and you try to do everything to the nth degree, if you have clients, for instance, I don't know why anybody would do this for their clients, but if you are thinking all night about how to serve your clients better and you're answering emails and answering questions that don't exist, well, maybe you're over-processing and overthinking it and trying to be a perfectionist. That's not that good. The next one is subtract, don't add. You know, many times removing a time waster can be an effective way to free yourselves up and can alleviate stress even more than adding a deliberately relaxing routine. In other words, get rid of something that wastes a lot of time and adds stress rather than maybe taking 15 minutes a day to do yoga or meditate or whatever. And finally, this is a good one, take a vacation. You know, refreshing and recharging, it's always a good idea, so consider taking a vacation if you're stressed out. And remember, no one on their deathbed ever said, I wish I had worked more. You know? I don't think anybody ever did.
I think I do know a couple people.
Well, most people don't. That's some good advice there from Johns Hopkins Health Review, so check it out. Again, all of our stories right below the player page right down there. You can check out that story.
Don't work too hard.
That's right.
All right. Well, before we move on to our next story, you may have noticed that we've added something to our player page. If you're on our player page, which looks something like that.
That's right.
There is a chat with us link located beneath the player. If you click on that, it opens up a little chat window and you can send comments to us live during the show. You do have to be signed into Google to chat, but hey, who doesn't have a Google or YouTube account, right? So if you click on the chat link, that opens up a chat window. If you aren't logged in, if you look at the very bottom of that little chat window, you'll see it says sign in. So if you have a Google account or whatever, you can sign in and hey, chat with us during the show. We might even say something back.
Ask us anything you want. You can
anything you want.
Ask Dirk about Brexit. I mean, he will tell you everything you need to know ever.
That's right. Okay, according to the trade publication Environmental Leader, food loss and waste cost businesses billions of dollars each year, and it generates about 8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So if food waste was a country, says the publication, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter in the planet behind China and the United States. So A new international standard addresses this issue. According to its developers, which include the World Resources Institute, WRI, and the Consumer Goods Forum, the Food Loss and Waste Accounting and Reporting Standard, also known as the FLW standard, will create a globally consistent framework for measuring and managing food waste. If you want to read more about this, you can check out the article, Why Leading Global Companies Are Using a New Food Waste Standard to Reduce Waste, which you can link to from the player page. And the standard, I mean, just briefly, the standard really is aimed at the various stops in the food supply chain, whether it's food producers and growers, or municipal or corporate entities, or restaurants or stores. All these companies that need to quantify how much of their food is wasted, because that's wasted money, right? It is not, from what I can tell, aimed at the end user, which is you or me who use food for ourselves or for feeding our animals. But that's actually what I want to talk about just a little bit here. Industry standards are great, and we need them. And obviously we cover standards a lot on this show. But often as consumers, we look to corporations and government and them, whoever them is, to fix all of our problems rather than recognizing our own responsibilities as consumers. And I think food waste is a good example of what we can look at in our own lives. I mean, obviously, in our businesses, we look at waste, waste in processes, waste in physical waste in our manufacturing operations. But I think we need to look at them on a personal level as well. And food waste, I think, is a big deal. I know that one of the food wastes I have, and I've been trying to address, is simply overbuying food. A lot of you might do your shopping at a big box store like Costco or Walmart, and you might buy for a month, or even if you go and you shop for a week. There's this tendency, I think, for many of us, unless you've really paid attention to it, to some stuff in the refrigerator, and a month from now or 3 weeks from now, you find yourself cleaning out your refrigerator, throwing out old vegetables, old milk, old this, old that. Not necessarily stuff you've cooked and haven't eaten, but stuff you bought and never used. Right. And this causes waste at both the front and the back end. So you have, if you look at first world countries, I think there's probably a lot of consumer food waste in first world countries, United States for instance. So what that causes, if you're using food, if you're buying food that you then don't use, you're actually forcing food producers to produce food to basically compensate for what you're going to throw out, because you're buying more than you need. Right. At the back end, you're throwing food out. So unless you're composting it, it's going into landfill. Sure. And then what happens? Well, now you have waste so you have waste at both ends. The waste of overproduction and the waste of just waste. Right. So you can pay attention to this a little bit and try to monitor how much you buy and how much you throw out. So, and that actually means that pay attention to what you're throwing out. If you're constantly throwing out half of your half gallon of milk, maybe you shouldn't be buying a half gallon of milk. Maybe you should be buying a quart of milk. Yeah, at a time. Right? Yeah. Shop more frequently. And shop for less. Shopping more frequently and less actually causes you to pay more attention to what you're buying. And then also think of ways to use old but not spoiled food. I mean, do you compost, or can you take all those vegetables that haven't spoiled but you don't really want to use them because your celery isn't crisp or whatever? Hey, you make vegetable broth and you use that for something else. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But I guess my whole point was, I think as consumers, we have to apply the same ideas that we apply when we go to work in terms of how do we reduce waste at work, because it impacts the bottom line, and look at what we're doing as well in our home lives, and are we producing waste there? Because it has the same effect, regardless of whether it's waste at work or waste at home. The end result is the same. It's waste, which is bad for the environment and bad for resource utilization.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Something to think about.
Good thought there, Dirk. Yeah, I agree with that, and we all do it. I've done it too many times, and every time you throw it out, you're like, oh, I wish I didn't. It's frustrating.
Wasted money.
So good stuff there. All right, thanks, Dirk. All right, we're going to turn now to our monthly CMSC Corner segment, in which we chat with leading figures in the world of large volume and close tolerance 3D measurement systems. The Coordinate Metrology Society, our partner and the leading organization for professionals in this space, works with us to bring you this feature each and every month. Well, the Coordinate Metrology Society's conference, CMSC 2016, as you all may know, is coming up in just a month now, July 25th through 29th in the suburbs of Nashville, Murfreesboro actually, Tennessee. There's a lot to see at this year's show. The Measurement Zone, and this year is going to feature the brand new education zone for the first time, many workshops, some great competitions, loads of networking opportunities, and a tour of Nissan's plant in nearby Smyrna. And of course, the heart of the conference are original, unpublished technical white papers from experts throughout industry and academia.
Might even see Elvis.
That's right. You never know. That's natural. That's right. Well, as usual, Dirk and I are going to be at the CMSC, as will this month's guest, Rena Mallory-Korgel of Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence. Rena is also the current chairperson of the CMSC's Executive Committee. So, Rena, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome.
Well, it's great to have you here. Well, as I mentioned in my little lead in there's a lot going on at this month's conference. And one thing we talked about is the ever popular measurement zone, of course, is back. And this year you're adding an education zone to the measurement zone. So, you know, in your opinion, really kind of what is that all about and what does that bring to the table to add an education zone to the measurement zone?
Hi. Well, first of all, the purpose of the measurement zone and the education zone is to provide knowledge and understanding to support metrology education and practical methodology requirements for the specialists, the technicians, the certified operators that use the technologies. So we're here to gather data on the way people actually use the equipment and to turn that data into training procedures, to see what people typically will do that is bad practice and to incorporate what are good practices. So the measurement zone has typically been 5 different zones, all encompassing various hands-on techniques, various educational learning opportunities. And now we have divided up the 2 zones into a measurement zone and an education zone, such that the education zone can focus more on the educational aspect of their focus, and the measurement zone is still incorporating lots of fun techniques to get people to do audience participation on as hands-on competition. That's always been a very lively area to try to get in there. They have 26 slots for people to actually get in there, measure an article, and at the very end, there'll be a grand prize winner to see who got closest to the answer that the experts have provided before the setup ever began. On the education zone, let me also mention that the measurement zone is being sponsored by Metrology. We thank them very much. And the newly created education zone is being sponsored by Creaform. And in there, we're focusing on, again, e-learning. So people will be able to come in, grab a laptop and a set of headphones and sort through the different classes that are available and take them as they wish. There'll be 3 different workshops being given on GD&T, laser tracker usage, and the star of the show has been the Metrology Jeopardy! There's going to be 4 fun rounds of Jeopardy! The first 3 will be the playoff rounds, and the last one will kind of be the grand finale for kind of like a Super Bowl of Metrology Jeopardy! And all of the questions in the Jeopardy! Game are being based off of the questions that are given in our certification test for the knowledge base. That's level 1 knowledge base certification. So we invite all the people to come on down to the exhibit hall, stop in the education zone, stop in the measurement zone, and take a look at all the opportunities that they have there at CMSC 2016.
It's lively. We've been there. I mean, we haven't obviously seen the education zone yet, but the measurement zone is always a lively part of the exhibit hall. So yeah, you're definitely going to want to check that out.
A lot of cool equipment there.
A lot, definitely. Professor Ed Morse of UNC Charlotte is going to be your keynote speaker this year, and a lot of academics, of course, attend CMSC. Think that academics bring to industry and vice versa. What does industry bring to academia?
Well, goodness, I think that academia gets to hit metrology on the bottom level as well as the very top level. On the bottom level, I'm talking about our entry-level folks. Academia has come in and seen the need that our profession has in getting qualified people. So they have then gone back to their schools and started to develop programs, excuse me, that are focused on using metrology in not just metrology alone, but in assembly and in manufacturing, so that the students get a very well-rounded education as to how metrology fits into assembly, reading the blueprints, extracting those GD&T callouts, and being able to figure out what kind of dimensions and what kind of measurements need to be taken to satisfy those requirements. So that's on the bottom end. And when I talk about the top end, I think academia gets to come in and show us, the community, where it is that we need to go. You know, they have a very fresh perspective, almost a very naive perspective, I want to say, because those of us that work on the factory floor tend to get a little jaded through the years. We'll say, oh, you know, no, that'll never work, that'll never pass. When academia can come in there and with a fresh perspective give us some new ideas on approaches on how to do things, and maybe avenues that we hadn't thought of on pursuing. So once again, I think that academia serves the community very well on both the top and the bottom levels.
You know, you mentioned, or Mike mentioned Ed Morse and University of North Carolina, Charlotte. They're your partners in the Precision Path Consortium, which is meeting at the show. For those who don't know, Precision Path brings industry and academia together to address the needs of aerospace and other key industries in terms of high accuracy metrology and so forth. I mean, how do you see Precision Path benefiting industry?
Well, I see it because it is a coalition made up of the community itself, between the OEMs and the users of the equipment. And these are the people who, particularly, who make large-scale, high-tolerance artifacts. And metrology seems to be the biggest leading technology, or that lends itself to this industry. So what we plan to do is try to roadmap, try to figure out all the possible blockages, what is needed for this industry to continue to stay on top of large-scale manufacturing. So it's almost like trying to make a fishbone chart. We're trying to ask the community, what are all the inputs that go into being an organization that is a manufacturer of large-scale, high-tolerance parts. And once we can figure out what all these inputs are, we're looking for the roadblocks. Okay, what are the areas that are going to be hard for us to broach, hard for us to get across, and those are going to be the areas that academia, as our OEMs, will need to focus on. So I think this community between CMSC, UNC Charlotte, and the Precision Path Consortium, we hope to drive the path to keep us in the forefront of large-scale manufacturing by identifying the roadblocks and having the OEMs and academia focus on those roadblocks.
And we're running out of time, Rena, but I do want to mention to everyone out there that there's a survey that you are conducting on Precision Path. The website is www.precisionpathconsortium.com. It's going to ask about things like details on industry professionals, what kind of metrology equipment they use, all sorts of things like that. So you guys will get that survey. Of course, we're encouraging everyone out there to go out and take that survey, and you guys will have the results. Well, Rena, thank you for joining us today on CMSC Corner. We're going to see you, gosh, in like 4 or 5 weeks down in Murfreesboro, and we'll talk more then.
All right, see you then. Bye-bye, Mike.
Thanks, Rena.
See you, Rena.
See ya.
Thanks a lot. Hey, we actually had somebody who did actually use our new chat feature.
Wow,
yeah,
okay, all right.
Amazing. Oh, let's just take that one real quick because it had to do with my news item that we just had a little
go ahead,
bit ago. Most waste products come from the industrial model. Local produce equals less waste. And I think what's being said there is that certainly with food, but probably with other things as well, is transport is a big part of waste. The farther you have to transport something, then you've got all your your fossil fuels that go into that transport. Obviously, you got waste that comes out of the tailpipe for transport. In as much as you can produce locally, whether it's food or anything else, if that's feasible, you're reducing the amount of waste due to transport. So that's a good point.
That's a great point.
And hey, anybody got comments? Feel free to use the little chat box to us.
Yep, continue to send them in to us. We love dealing with that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, if you like breaking things, or are like me and you just kind of break things indiscriminately all the time, this article is for you. How things break and why scientists want to know from the Argonne National Laboratory tells us why breaking something can be a good thing. Yay! Especially if you want to know why it broke, besides you just knock it off the table. If you've ever taken your knocking, smoking, lurching car to the mechanic, only to have it run perfectly once you got it there, you know what I mean. I mean, a smart mechanic, having seen many broken cars with the symptoms you've described, can make some educated guesses even if your car isn't currently showing the symptoms. Right. And the way they do that is they use their knowledge of why things break. And they can then try to make the symptoms appear by aggravating a key a component that experience has taught them might be responsible. So they've learned from breaking cars and working on lots of cars what might aggravate a problem. So that's kind of one example of why maybe breaking your car with a mechanic breaks your car to see the problem. So sometimes you have to push something to its limits and force it to break so that you understand why it might break, maybe under less stressful situations. And this is what they do at, or part of what they do at Argonne National Labs. So for instance, researchers at the Argonne battery testing facility charge and drain batteries over and over and over again to find out how long each lasts before breaking down. Or they cool and heat batteries to find out how how temperature affects their performance. And this helps answer questions like, what will happen to my battery if I leave my car sitting for a week in the dead of winter, for maybe those of you who live out on the East Coast? Right. Or how about in the dead heat of summer, for those of us who live out here? By seeing how batteries fail or succeed, developers can change the battery's design to improve performance and life. So in that case, researchers are breaking batteries to understand under what conditions they work or not. By the way, we see the same idea in the manufacturing world when we say heat, shake, or drop test electronic equipment. You know, how much heat can it withstand? How much shock can it withstand before we send it to the customer? But sometimes we want to break the raw materials that go into a part. For instance, we might do tensile testing to understand the characteristics of a new composite metal. So we will stretch it until it, what? Until it breaks. Exactly. At Argonne Labs, this kind of thing happens when they break atoms. So at the Argonne Tandem LINAC accelerator system, scientists shoot beams of heavy nuclei at different targets according to the article. And by calibrating the energy at which the nuclei collide, they can fuse the nuclei, break them apart, or have them rotate together, picking up pieces of the target. Each interaction creates data that illuminates different pieces of the interactions that govern matter and, by extension, our lives.
Cool.
So breaking things are really important. And by the way, this idea of breaking things doesn't apply just to the physical world. I mean, we're talking about the physical world right now, but it actually also deals with human interactions. So you can think of, let's say, customer interactions. Sometimes we might want to break, deliberately break, well, we'll use the word test instead of break, customer transactions to see what is it that customers respond to, what makes customers upset or gives you negative feedback. And sometimes you have to run experiments to see where that occurs. Obviously, you don't want to keep the experiment too long, but you have to do it and to understand what will customers withstand.
Yeah, stress testing. I mean,
you're stress testing.
You're stress testing everything. And actually, it's interesting you say that because my next story is gonna kind of be a little bit about that too. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it is. It's a matter of understanding how far something can go, and if it's gonna fail, you want to know how it fails. So when you see it beginning to fail, maybe you can take steps to avoid it failing. And yeah, that can be a customer interaction or it can be a physical interaction. It really doesn't matter. And yeah, as I said, it's kind of interesting because this next one is kind of about that same thing. The title of the article I'm going to be covering now is How Can Hospitals Possibly Prepare for Disasters? It's the name of a piece written by Sam Charter that ran in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Well, sadly, of course, as I think we all know, we recently had another mass shooting in Orlando. And I mean, this is really the departure point for this particular story, and of course it's a great tragedy. A lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people were badly injured. And author of this piece, Sam Charter, he is the senior administrator for Emory University's Office of Critical Event Preparedness and response. And he also manages the university's threat assessment team. And we know that institutes of higher learning, we know this unfortunately from experience, have been the scenes of many of these incidences. And academia is really taking an active role in understanding preparedness for these kind of tragic events. Not only shootings, but acts of God like hurricanes, other disasters as well. It's all about preparedness. It's kind of like you said. I mean, you want to see the system at stress and how it may break, and then be able to figure out ways to prevent that from going wrong. Well, in the immediate aftermath of the Pulse nightclub shooting that happened a few weeks back, the Orlando Regional Medical Center was overwhelmed. You can imagine they were overwhelmed with dozens of seriously wounded patients. I actually didn't realize this. Inferring this from his story, I think that was really pretty much the only place where these wounded were sent. I don't think there was other medical centers. I think everybody pretty much was sent to the Orlando Regional Medical Center. I mean, there were 49 fatalities and I think 53 wounded. And I mean, those that were in it, the doctors, the emergency personnel said it was like something out of a war, and of course it was.
Sure.
You're talking about 100 casualties. I mean, in the course of minutes, right? Being sent to these hospitals. I mean, unbelievable to imagine the stress, as I say, that these medical centers were under. Well, what they did and what they've done in the past to take care of or prepare for these types of events is what they call surge modeling. I think we've all heard of this, but it was interesting to hear described in this particular article. Surge modeling really used in this instance, it involves rapid mobilization of emergency medical teams. It involves, of course, triage on the ground, and the focus is always on reducing mortality. Triage, of course, you deal with the most injured people first. So the idea is that you're going to reduce mortality at every step of the equation. And you want to be able to roll out very, very quickly these solutions. Well, the bottom line is really that surge modeling really protects you and protects these facilities in what is a very dangerous world. It protects their ability to function and to help those of us who unfortunately may be caught in these terrible situations, and to treat us and to help us. And that's emergency personnel and the medical field as well. And lives depend on it now more than ever. I think lives depend on these types of responses and the pre-positioning of these resources to deal with these eventualities. Unfortunately, they're happening very frequently. And I think every major medical center and emergency response team needs to be aware of this and take these precautions.
Right, exactly. And actually, we've seen this discussion. You mentioned natural disasters. We saw that discussion come up following Katrina. We've seen it at other natural disasters, where the hospitals were just caught off guard. And following that, they had to go, okay, look, we need to have something in place, a process in place, so that we can put into action right away, and at least know how to deal, how to move forward when this kind of stuff happens.
And most of it is mobilization.
Right.
Fast mobilization is a problem. You don't want to have to figure it out as you're going. You want to have the plan in place. Say, okay, we need the resources right now. We need these ambulances. We need these medical workers. We need them right now to be available here immediately, within 15 minutes, whatever it is, to get here and help with this, because we have dozens of casualties. And it's the world we live in, unfortunately. So interesting article there from Sam Charter. So check it out again, right below the player page, right down there to check out that article.
Well, roll it back. Now it's time for Tweet of the Week.
That's right.
That's right, where we hear from all sorts of tweeters out there.
Tweeters.
Tweeters. This one is very timely. This tweet is, if we can pop that up onto the screen. Oh, because I didn't see who it was. Oh, we don't know who it's from. Okay.
It's from Quality Digest.
Oh, it is from Quality Digest. Hey, there we go. It's us. Wow. Should read our tweets more often. Not sure if this is an election year subliminal messaging or not, but it seems awfully familiar. I haven't seen that. That's funny.
That's pretty good. I don't know whose hair that might be. But
you're right. I saw this right there. That's funny.
See, we don't show Dirk these things beforehand.
That's perfect. I got it immediately.
Because we're asking for these types of reactions. That's what's known as a reaction shot, people.
It's Hillary Clinton's hair.
That's authenticity for you, you know. And once you get fake authenticity, you got to go. Good job, Dirk. Well, that's our tweet of the week. Thanks. All right. Well, that's our show for the week. Before we go, we want to thank this week's sponsor. Mitutoyo Corporation is the world's largest provider of measurement and inspection solutions, offering the most complete selection of machines, sensors, systems, and services, with a line encompassing CMMs, vision, form, and finish measuring machines, as well as precision tools and instruments, and metrology data management software. Mitutoyo's nationwide network of metrology centers and support operations provides application, calibration, service repair, and educational programs to ensure that their more than 6,000 metrology products will deliver measurement solutions for their customers. For more information, visit mitutoyo.com or click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
That's right. And that wraps up this week's Quality Digest Live. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And by the way, if large volume 3D metrology is your gig, then you want to watch for CMSC 2016 in Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Just outside
right
Nashville,
outside Nashville.
City.
That's right. So come by and check that out. Still time to come. It's coming up in about 4 or 5 weeks. And thank you, of course, Rena Malari-Korgel of Hexagon and the CMSC for joining us today to talk to us a little bit about the upcoming show.
And we will see you next Friday.
Next week. Yeah. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.